everyone. Welcome back to Spring into Math 7. I'm Mrs. Campbell, and today we're going to be talking about similar and congruent figures. Let's get started. Let's start by looking at some congruent figures. So congruent figures have the exact same shape and size. Get that highlighted? They have congruent sides and angles. Now the first one, it's obvious that they're congruent. This one, it's still pretty obvious. This one may look, example C, a little different, but you have to think, if you were to pick up this second figure, if you could cut it out, pick it up, flip it around, would it position itself perfectly on top of the other one? Yes, in fact it would. So these two shapes are congruent. And we show congruent figures using this little symbol right here. Looks like two equal signs with a little squiggly line on top of it. All right, let's talk about testing for congruence. So we test for congruence by comparing each side and angle of the two figures to see if all aspects of both are the same. If the sides are the same length and the angles are equal, then the figures will be congruent. There's one pair here that is congruent. You might be able to pick up on it right away. Can you tell? Yeah, it's this last one. See, they both have the right angle, and they both have the same exact shape and measurements. This one has a 45-degree angle and a 55, 110, and 110. However, look at the differences in their length. One's twice as big as the other, so they are not congruent. All right, let's talk about how we find unknown measures of congruent figures. So we can use the information we have about one figure in a pair of congruent figures. That would help us figure out the information that we need, the measurements for the corresponding angle or side in the other figure. So let me show you what I mean by this. Okay, so if you've got A, B, C, D, and I were to go around like that, you can kind of see how this next shape is in fact congruent. It just looks like it's sort of been lifted up on its side. But it is in fact the same shape as PQRS. Okay, now here's what we know. Let's talk about what exactly is congruent. How I'm going to write this out in symbol form is to write my congruent sides, AB, is congruent with a little squiggly line to PQ. BC is congruent to QR. AD is congruent to PS. And DC is congruent to SR. Now let's talk about our congruent angles. Angle A is congruent to angle P. Angle B is congruent to angle Q. Angle D is congruent to, angle S. And angle C is congruent to angle R. All right, so now we can use what we know about one figure to find out measurements of the other side, of the other figure. Okay, so let's look at this. What is the length of side AB? Well, that's kind of tough because we don't know, but we do. Because we know that AB is congruent with PQ, we know that AB will also equal 7 centimeters, just the same way that PQ was. Okay, and we can kind of do the same thing with angles as well. So can we find the measure of angle C? Well, yes, we could, but we have a problem here. We don't know the angle, because even though they're congruent, if I were to shift this one on its side, I don't have the measurement for angle R. So I'm going to have to approach this problem from a different angle. No pun intended, from a different angle. Okay, we need to first find the measures of all the angles in the first figure. I think that's the easiest way to do it. Angle A is 110, angle D is 70. Now remember, the angles in a parallelogram altogether, interior angles have to total 360 degrees. And don't forget, angle A will correspond to angle C. So angle C is going to be exactly the same thing as angle A. And angle D corresponds to angle B. Both of those will be 70, and A and C will be 110. So I use that approach to find out that angle C equals 110 degrees. All right, I also wanted to talk about similarity. Now, similar figures look identical, except they're different sizes. When we have figures that are proportional to each other, they are similar. Similar figures have the same angle measurements, but different side lengths. So take a look at these similar pairs. You can see how these two figures are the same, only this one is twice the size. The angles are the same. They both have two 90-degree right angles, actually 4, but it's 2 centimeters and 4 centimeters. And this one as well, these two figures as well. Although they're different in length, their lengths, the side lengths are different. The degrees of their angles are the same. 60, 50, 70, 60, 50, 70. So those are similar figures. All right, squares are similar because they always have 90-degree angles and 4 equal sides, even if the length of the sides differ. Other shapes can be similar too if their angles are equal. And there's another example. All right, we check for similarity between given figures. Now, when we're dealing with similar figures, remember that we're looking at the angles rather than the sides. The angles are congruent even if the sides are not. So these are similar, and so are these two diamond shapes because their angles are the same measurement. So they are similar. All right, let's look at these two shapes. Again, pretend that you could cut this smaller shape out, pick it up and put it on top. Would it be the same? No, but it would be the same. It's similar, it's just smaller. So what angles correspond to which? Here's G. Well, that's kind of easy because we have the box for the right angle. So we know that's going to be W. So G is to W, H is to X, I is to Y, and J is to Z. All right, and when we're writing similar sides, we can write them as proportions. So I have written GH over WX, HI over XY, IJ over YZ, and GJ over WZ. Okay, now it's your turn. Let's see if you can do it. Which pair of figures below do you feel or looks to you to be similar? Pause your video if you need, check them out. All right, how did you do? Did you come up with the figures on number C? You should have, that's the correct answer. All the angle measurements are the same, just the length of their sides is different. So answer C, the answer is C, and those are the two figures that have the congruent angles. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. We'll see you next time.